You're listening to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I recorded this episode on unceded Wurundjeri land in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia, where Aboriginal peoples had been birthing at home, on country, for thousands of years prior to the British invasion. They are the original storytellers. If you want to learn more about me, the podcast, or how I can support you in achieving your home birth, be sure to check out my Instagram at birthingathome_a podcast. Episode 37 is shared today by Emma in South Australia. I primarily connected with Emma as she is a mental health doula, and I was keen to learn more about her role. But then I also learned that she had a very empowering home birth experience that she was happy to share. It was great chatting to Emma, someone with a wealth of experience in mental health and the postpartum period, who came to find pre- and postnatal counselling due to the common pattern she observed in her early counselling work, and how impactful that was on childhood mental health, something which significantly influences mental well-being in adulthood. I hope it inspires you to plan for your postpartum or your loved one's postpartum. And you may notice in the episode description that you can now send me fan mail. Simply click the link on your mobile device and send me a message. I would love to hear from you. Enjoy this episode, guys. Welcome, Emma, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And you're joining us from South Australia.
Correct.
That's cool. Where roughly in South Australia are you?
I live south of Adelaide, down on the Fleurieu Peninsula.
Oh, cool. The Fleurieu Peninsula. That sounds like very fancy.
It's fancy, yeah. It's totally fancy.
Awesome. I'm really excited to talk to you because I spoke to someone that you supported, and when I heard her say a mental health doula, I was like, what the heck is that? And so here we are. So do you want to give a bit of background about who you are, and, you know, what you do, who's in your family kind of thing?
Yes. So I'm Emma Holdsworth, and as you just mentioned, mental health doula is how I refer to myself. I am mother of two. My girls are 11 and 4, and they live here with me just over half the time, and with their dad, who lives a stone's throw away.
Amazing.
For the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I live down south of Adelaide.
Yeah.
Have lived here for since my first daughter was 5 weeks old, and previous to that in Melbourne. She was born in Melbourne, and my littlest one was born here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, amazing. That's funny because I'm in Melbourne too. Did you like grow up in Melbourne, or were you just here sort of randomly?
I grew up here in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And moved overseas, lived in the UK for several years, and then met my kid's dad.
Yeah.
And I wanted to come back to Australia, and he didn't want to come back to sleepy Adelaide, so he said, "Oh, why don't we move to Melbourne?" I was like, "Well, that's close enough." So we lived in Melbourne.
Was Radelaide. Everybody tells me Adelaide is Radelaide.
It is Radelaide. It is very rad. But we didn't have any kids at that point, so you know, it was and to go from London to sleepy southern Radelaide was a bit of a leap for him. Yeah. So Melbourne, then Yarra Valley, then when we became parents, we came back here because this is where we have family.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And so you call yourself or you are a mental health doula, but it all sort of started with your work becoming a counsellor?
Yeah, so when we were in Melbourne, I was working in like NGOs in case management and crisis counselling kind of roles, so in domestic violence, and then when I became pregnant, I was working in a role with high-risk adolescents, trying to kind of keep them in their homes and keep their relationship with their parents steady so that they didn't become homeless, and trying to keep them engaged in education. And that was a real turning point for me, because it was when I started to realise that everything that I was seeing coming up with the teenagers was related to their relationship with their own parents, usually their mothers, in the first few years of their lives.
Yeah.
So that was a real turning point for me as far as where I saw the biggest need for support. So then when my first daughter was born and we'd moved here to Adelaide, I started a kind of more general counselling practice.
Yeah.
That was called Treehouse Family Counselling. So I saw parents and kids at that time as well.
Yeah.
And over the years that kind of grew and morphed into seeing less kids and more parents, because again, it was that realisation that, kids don't need to be fixed.
Yeah.
They're not a problem.
Yeah.
They just need to be supported in a different way.
Yeah.
And so I would work with parents in supporting their kids in a different way, or the way that they wanted.
Yeah.
And it just kind of grew to supporting parents earlier and earlier in their parenting journey. I started a mums and bubs group, which was called the Under One Mums Circle, which is actually still running today.
Yeah, I saw that on your website. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of my first foray into, okay, how can I support people in that, like give people more intensive support than what other parent groups were offering.
Yeah.
Because mums can continue to attend until their baby turns 1. So it's, really building those long relationships and kind of getting to the bottom of the real issues. So I started that when I was doing my more general counselling practice. And, as I mentioned already, that idea that it was really mums during their pregnancy and in preparation for becoming mothers and during the first few years of their babies' lives that were needing the most support, and that was who I kept coming, who kept coming to me, I guess, in my practice. I studied to be a postpartum doula. Studied with Julia Jones, who has newborn mothers in WA.
Yeah.
And then it all just kind of morphed together.
Yeah.
And just before my second baby was born, I knew I was going to be taking time off, and so I'd kind of thought, okay, well, let's use this opportunity when I do get back into working with clients again to kind of start fresh, I guess.
Yeah.
And really turn my attention to working more with those mums one-on-one in that early time. Gave up my office. I had an office where I was seeing clients.
Yeah.
And then when I started getting back into work after she was born, that was when I rebranded my business to what it is now, which is just my name.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
To be just myself.
You can't hide behind anything then, right?
No, that's right. And I was doing, counselling and postpartum doula and parenting education and, all the things that I'd always done.
Yeah.
But just trying to bring them all together and, what is this thing and what is this offer? And so that's when the term mental health doula was born, and people haven't heard of it because it's not really a thing. I just kind of made it up because
but I think it's super apt, duh.
Yeah, right.
Because I obviously work in mental health as well with young people. I totally 1,000% understand what you're saying. And as I sort of morph myself into, doula, the doula world, I'm like, well, how do I bring my mental health knowledge into this space, because it is absolutely needed, and that is my belief that it's all like interlinked, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I guess going back I don't know how far, but
so far.
Growing up, do you remember what your ideas around birth and pregnancy were?
That's an interesting question. I always knew that I wanted to be a mum.
Yeah.
Definitely. I can remember thinking when I had my first boyfriend when I was 14 that like how cool it would be to be a mum and that I was ready at that point.
My goodness.
Thank goodness that never happened because, you know, we're definitely not going to go into talking about that relationship, but it was a dream. It was always something that I wanted to do, but I don't recall ever really thinking about pregnancy and birth then like, as a kid. It's only in my later life that I've like had a lot more questions for my mum about, you know, her experiences of birth and what that was like for her. I mean, I was in my 30s when I had my kids, and she was in her early 20s when she first became a mum, 21 when my sister was born.
Wow.
So her experience was very different to anything that I would wish for anyone.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Not that it was bad, but you know, just she would have just gone into it with that. I guess that idea of it's just what you do. You just go and do it, and you just do what you're told, and and then you get a baby.
That's just the process. But
I don't remember thinking about. You know, I knew I wanted to be a mum, but I don't remember thinking about pregnancy or birth.
Yeah, and so when it came to having your eldest daughter, who you said is 11, right? Yeah. And so you had her in Melbourne in hospital. Like, did you do like any particular like education, or like did you have any knowledge of, you know, birth and pregnancy? Obviously you had like your mental health background, but in terms of like making those connections then, was that already happening?
Yeah, definitely. So we did a calm birth
workshop thing.
It was like 4-day workshop with a midwife. She was born at Box Hill Hospital. At that time, they had like it was connected to the hospital, but it was a birth centre called a birth centre, but I don't think it really was. Didn't have a continuity of care. Yeah, that's right. No continuity of care program there, but just, you know, slightly separate to the hospital and midwife led. Which, you know, at that time, that was from kind of what I knew. I was like, oh yeah, this is got a great reputation as a birth centre, and it's midwives, so it's not, you know, that was kind of my understanding was if it's midwife led, then that's great. I don't know if we would have had any other options that would have had a better continuity of care options at that time. Home births were not really a thing, not really allowed. So the midwife who ran our calm birth course, she was talking about how she could as a midwife she could come and labour with us at home, and if the baby was accidentally born then that would be okay, but we couldn't plan it. But that was like if the baby's accidentally born, you know. So she was kind of saying, yeah, we can do it, but this is how we have to kind of sell it. Which as a first-time mum, I was like, oh, I can't like it must be, there must be something wrong. It must not be safe then if it's not allowed, if we're not allowed to do it. So it was definitely on my mind and something that I was interested in, but I was too scared because of those restrictions at that time. The calm birth was amazing. Still now, my kid's dad, still when he comes across any expectant couple, he's like, calm birth, you've got to do calm birth. It was so good for him. Him especially, because he, you know, I was the one, you know, I was doing all the research and all the reading and all the, you know, finding out this and that. And about interventions and all the things, but that was really his first bit of education, and he found it really helpful, and he was an amazing support during her labour and birth, I think probably because of that.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I read a lot of things. I had a plan. We'd done calm birth, but I was not in any way prepared for how the system was going to eat me alive.
Yeah. I actually, just going back to the partner bit, I was talking to a colleague the other day. I feel like as a mental health nurse, in my team, I'm the bit of the weirdo that I'm always talking about birth and home birth, and I'm the one with the podcast and stuff. And he was asking, he was like, "What is it about this water birth?" And to me, water birth is just the thing that you can do. It's not a major topic, but to him he was like, wow, that's so weird. And he's like, does it even do anything? So I was talking to him, and then at some point he said, oh well, when it comes to be my time, I don't know, it's not my decision to do any of these things. And I just thought that's such a common perception amongst partners, that it is, your wife or girlfriend or, the mother of your child having the baby. So it's her body. So sure. But in situations like birth, when, you're in that vulnerable position, partners do need to be able to have a say and put some boundaries and say yes and no, and they need to have knowledge around birth and pregnancy and interventions. And I sat on my chair and I was just like, oh God, my shift's almost over. I don't think I have time to go this deep into this conversation.
So needed, but yes,
so
who can have it?
Needed. So reflecting on, that experience with your first daughter, what was it like for you then?
So I had premature rupture of membranes.
Yeah.
And in Victoria at that time, the rules were up to 72 hours.
Yeah.
And at that time in Adelaide, the rules were 12 hours. So
12 hours?
I got more time because I was across the border.
Oh, my God. It's so dumb, isn't it?
12 hours before any intervention in Adelaide at that time. I think it's 24 hours now in Adelaide. I don't know what it is in Victoria now.
Oh, my gosh.
But I thought, 72 hours, I thought that wasn't really long enough.
Yeah.
And so I'd, up until that point, I'd managed to refuse quite a few different things. But then it was this, okay, come in each day and we'll just check and see how much water there is and watch out for meconium. And so I'd gotten into that mindset of I have to try and make my body go into labour. And then, of course, your body's not going to go into labour, right, when you're trying to force it to go into labour instead of just being able to chill.
Yeah.
So I I did have meconium staining.
Yeah.
And I had a very typical, from what I now understand, conversation with a doctor who said, this is an emergency now, we need to induce you. And I said, can't I have more time? And she said, do you want your baby to die? And I said, no, I don't want my baby to die. Well, do I have to be induced so my baby doesn't die? Yes, you need to be induced. So then I agreed to be induced, and they said, oh, we're a bit busy at the moment. Can you come back in 4 hours?
Oh.
It was honestly so predictable and ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had a very long induced labour.
Just pausing here to thank the May sponsor for the podcast, Let's Talk Birth, and share a discount code with you all. At Let's Talk Birth, they're dedicated to providing unwavering support to women as they prepare for childbirth and beyond. You can discover tailored doula support, curated products, and expert guidance from endorsed midwives and certified lactation consultants, all in one convenient place. Join their community and experience a space of knowledge, compassion, and shared experiences as you navigate your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. We hold the mother while she holds the baby. For an exclusive 15% off this May, use the code ELSIE15, that's ELSIE15 at checkout. You can visit letstalkbirth.au to see all of their amazing products. I recently got the Bink glass water bottle and I love it, but they have amazing carriers and very, very cool brands in store. So make sure you check it out. And thank you again so much, Let's Talk Birth, for supporting the podcast. Okay, now we get on with the rest of the episode.
Really full on. From when they put the drip in, it was I think like 22 hours until she was born.
Yeah.
And couldn't go in the water, couldn't do anything because I had all the monitoring and all the things.
Yeah.
The drip and the head clip and all the stuff.
Yeah.
Ended up having her vaginally. There was a registrar who the chief obstetrician at the time was trying to have me taken to theatre because she thought I needed to have a cesarean, even though the head was nearly out. And a registrar at the time said, I think we can get the baby out with some vigorous perineal stretching, is what she called it. And my partner at the time still talks about how that was something like that he can never get out of his head. That she had her, basically cut an episiotomy and, put her hands inside of me and pulled my baby out.
Yeah.
And ridiculously at the time I felt grateful for her because she had said, no, let's not go to theatre.
Yeah.
So it was, I was glad to have not had a cesarean. I was glad to have not gone to theatre. They were talking about vacuum, which we were going to theatre for a vacuum, but I knew what going to theatre. I knew how going to theatre ends.
Yeah.
So I was quite traumatised by my experience.
Yeah.
They then pulled on my cord to try and get my placenta out, and my uterus just shut up shop. Cord snapped, had to go to theatre anyway to have my placenta removed. So I felt I felt like a lot of things had been done to me and that my power had been taken away.
Yeah.
My partner at the time had been, he'd been pulling people aside and taking them outside and telling them, this is the birth plan, but we need to have conversations about this and that. But we definitely got railroaded.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to recover.
Of course.
And I vowed within the first year of her life that if I had another baby, I wouldn't be going to hospital.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be going near a hospital to have a baby again.
Yeah.
And started to learn all I could learn about home birth and other options and read about the things that had happened to me.
Yeah.
Because, you can't learn everything before you have your first.
Yeah.
And so I felt angry really.
Yeah.
I felt angry that I hadn't been informed well enough about things that were happening. I hadn't been given enough choices. I'd been, told things like, you're not, because they weren't really talking to me. They were talking to the midwife. She's not pushing hard enough, or, she's not, she's not working hard enough. She's not doing her job, basically.
It's disgusting, right? Like when I hear people but it's so many people that I talk to are saying that this is the language that is being used, and like that, women are typically, you know, treated as if they're not even there. They're like they're invisible, like that you're in labour, kind of have a conversation with you, but quite happily will assume consent, and, you know, it's just absolute madness. Mind-boggling. And before you had your eldest daughter, had you done much sort of postpartum, like birth trauma kind of work?
No.
Okay.
No, I that all came after. So I'd been working I'd worked in domestic violence.
Yeah.
I'd worked in with high risk teens, some who had been pregnant and had babies.
Yeah.
But I hadn't. Crisis counselling from the DV work, but not specifically related to the trauma of birth. Other traumas, but not birth trauma.
Yeah.
I became interested in that after my own experience, as we do.
Yeah. That's the journey, I guess. And so you were learning about home birth and stuff like through, you know. So your youngest is 4, you said.
Yeah.
So in that, what is it, like 6 or 7 years, that's when you started to get into the more postpartum work. Yeah,
exactly. So I started just doing a lot of reading and learning for myself. As a way, I guess, also to heal from my own experience and to feel that sense of validation that I didn't get from people saying, "Oh, at least you had a vaginal birth. At least you and your baby were fine. Healthy mum, healthy baby."
Yeah.
Oh my God. All the crap that we hear. So it was just by talking to people and doing research and reading and following different people on social media and that I started to understand that there could be a different way. And also I wanted to parent my child in a way that kind of led me down that path as well, because a lot of the same attachment parenting or aware parenting or conscious parenting or a lot of those kind of same ideas that I was interested in were in the same realm as the home birth or natural birth, vaginal birth kind of people. So that kind of, I guess, more kind of natural, I guess you could say, natural learning. And I reckon my daughter was probably around 5 or 6 when. No, she must have been younger than that because she was 6 when her sister was born. So she must have been when I was kind of coming out of that fog of, baby toddler. Mothering, when you're like, oh, I could like do more things, or that I decided to study to be a postpartum doula. And always knowing at that time that I wanted to combine the two, but feeling like that was the missing piece. And, I think also still at that time I was probably of that mindset that like I have to know everything, or like I need to learn more things or have more certificates or whatever to be able to provide the kind of support that I wanted to provide. Now I'm much more of the mindset that like, I can provide it regardless of any pieces of paper. But it was then studying with Julia Jones that I started to kind of, I guess, formulate these ideas around how to combine the two, or how important mental health was in that postpartum period. And then when I was pregnant with my second baby, pregnancy, I suffer from hyperemesis gravidarum, so my pregnancies are
shocking.
Awful. Which was one of the reasons why it was so long between children. But also I had a couple of losses in the year before. my pregnancy with my youngest. So I had an early miscarriage, followed a few months later by an ectopic pregnancy.
Wow. Yeah.
And I had to have a fallopian tube removed when I had the ectopic, which again was, I was in hospital for a baby-related thing.
Yeah, of course, that's also not triggering or anything.
No, that's right. Also went to hospital for my miscarriage, which again I was like, why? Like I was like 7 weeks pregnant. And I went to hospital and ended up like miscarrying in the toilet in the emergency room, which was like, I really just wished so much that I was not there, that I was at home. Yeah. Because obviously what can they do? Yeah. At that point, there's nothing that can be done. But so that again, those moments of being in hospital, I'm not being in hospital for more baby things. Yeah. So it took a while for those reasons, having HG and the losses, and also talking my partner at the time into having another one.
Yeah, of course.
And so, when I became pregnant with her, I kind of made a decision that when I went back to work after her, that I was really gonna do that big pivot, because it felt like timing was right. If I was going to take some time off, then so during my pregnancy with her, I stopped doing the more general counselling work, which I'd kind of been starting to combine the two, but had been a bit scared to take the to fully take the leap. I had quite a bit of time off from when I was pregnant with her, because I was so unwell, and spent that time really like working out the birth that I wanted to have and what that was going to look like, and so that was helpful to have that time, even though I was mostly bedridden.
Yeah, it's so horrible. Was there any like particular like resources? So you'd already done calm birth, but like, was there anything in particular that still sticks out that you found really helpful?
When I was part of a kind of unofficial mums group with my first, when we first moved here to Adelaide, and one of the women was a private midwife. One of the women in the group was a private midwife, and she'd been the midwife for quite a few of the mums in that group. Yeah, and she had stopped midwifery because it was just all too horrible, and she decided to be a cat midwife instead. Yeah, excellent. She runs a cat rescue centre, and she gets the pregnant cats and looks after them, and
now that's a pivot. That's a pivot.
Yeah, right. Her partner's a vet, so it was like kind of a natural fit for her. Yeah, and she'd always loved animals, but it's a bit less stressful than
less regulations, maybe.
Exactly. And so when we were hanging out quite a bit, it was, she was going to be my midwife when I got pregnant again. And then because it took so long, she was then not practicing anymore. So I contacted her and said, will you doula for me?
Yeah, I'm not a cat, but will you still support me?
I'm not a cat, but will you still support me? And she said yes, thank goodness.
Amazing.
And so I would say she was 100% my best resource.
Yeah, cool.
She came and chatted with us together, and chatted with my partner at the time as well. They had some one-on-one chats to kind of help him through some stuff that he was going through at the time. Yeah. And I had a very close friend who was working as a group practice midwife. Okay. At the local hospital here, which is a continuity of care program. Yeah. Model. Yeah. That's the word I was looking for.
That's all right.
And so the plan was that she was going to be my midwife, and then I was going to have, and they do home births through that hospital as well. And all right, that's all going to be great. But then it turned out that she was pregnant. and she was going to be going on maternity leave, when I would have been about 30 weeks.
Okay, yeah.
So I felt very blessed that I had her in my corner, because she then gave me basically to the midwife that she thought was going to be best suited.
Yeah.
Also, still now looking back though, I'm like, oh, I could have, because it's a low risk model as well, so could have gone bad.
Yeah.
Could have gone bad, but didn't.
Yeah.
So I think so we did do a calm birth refresher, which was very helpful, with a different, because obviously we were in Adelaide, not in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it was people in my corner that were my best resources, rather than, any course I did or anything that I read. Yeah, for sure. It was those excellent people.
Yeah.
And the midwife that I had also turned out to be excellent.
Yeah. I always love, I mean, obviously it's horrible to hear, women's traumatic or, not very nice experiences in a hospital birth. But I always am so fascinated about the switch to home birth, because that's such a journey, because it's like completely different.
Yeah.
What was your experience of home birth like then? Was that the first, had you ever seen home birth before?
No. I'd had a lot of friends who had home birthed, but not that I'd been present for it. So a lot of home birth talk in my circles.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't something that I'd seen, but I felt very, very well prepared.
Yeah.
And mostly I knew what I didn't want.
Yeah.
And the difference for me, having two support people who knew me and who knew what I wanted and what I didn't want and what was important to me, and knew my previous experience, because the first time I had like 4 different midwife shift changes and I hadn't ever met any of them.
Yeah.
I just felt so much more relaxed and in control.
Yeah.
And I don't really even recall it being painful. That's so weird to say, especially because my second baby was ginormous.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, everything just went more smoothly.
Yeah.
And having not had, I didn't know what it was like to go into spontaneous labour, because my waters had broken and nothing had happened. I didn't know what that was going to feel like. Premature rupture of membranes I've discovered after my first was born, is like a family tradition, basically.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
My sister had that, like the waters breaking, like you see in the movies, right? Waters breaking is the first sign of a baby, which isn't usually for most people how it actually happens. In my family, it is what happens.
Wow.
So I was kind of preparing myself for that again, and had the midwife on board about when kind of don't call us until until you're ready for the clock to start ticking.
Yeah.
But everything just happened in much more flow.
Yeah.
My daughter was born on the 1st of November, so I actually went into labour, or lost my mucus plug, was the first sign of labour starting for me, when my eldest daughter and her dad were out trick-or-treating.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So they came home in costume and and he put her to bed, and I didn't say anything to her because I wanted her to not be too excited and wanted her to go to sleep. And just, I don't know, like it just all felt like everything happened in a really logical order, and like the way it should, or the way I felt like it should.
Yeah.
When your body's allowed to do, to do its thing.
Of course.
So I had a birth pool in the living room, and I had I've got a big hook that hangs from my ceiling. So I'd hung some, like, twisted up some sheets and hung them
like
from
a
the
sling
hook.
kind
And
of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had a ball, a birthing ball underneath that. So I was kind of sitting on that and hanging from those those twisted sheets was like they were spot on, amazing for that early
Do you remember
labour.
your arms being sore afterwards?
No.
That sounds
No, it was just just that gravity of hanging was really beautiful. And then I was just on my hands and knees for a while, and then my waters broke, and like that feeling, like the exploding waters feeling, was like, I remember being amazed at that because it was very different to my first experience, and thinking, oh, like that's clearly what's happened here, and that's like what it's meant to happen.
Yeah.
And that freaked my partner out a bit. And so he's then, I'm calling Sarah, who's the doula.
Yeah.
We'd called her earlier, and she'd said, just call me, when you want me to come. And he's like, there's a lot of stuff everywhere. Can you come? There's a lot of blood and
can't handle the
guts. I can't handle the stuff.
There's guts. There should not be guts.
No, that's right, exactly. I'm like, it's not guts, it's just chunky blood.
Don't
just
tell
calm
her
down.
Be guts.
She got here quick when she heard guts.
It's probably the guts.
That's right, exactly. So after she got here, I got in the pool, and it was so beautiful being in the water.
Yeah.
I could just remember thinking, oh, what a relief. Like, just the heaviness was just all lifted, which was really beautiful. And I remember that there was like this idea that the baby was going to be coming out soon. My daughter had said she wanted to be woken up. So
cool.
They woke her up at 1.
Yeah.
And her and her dad sat on the couch, and I had the midwife and the doula with me. And then the pushing stage took quite a lot longer. It was probably a bit premature to wake her up. But this giant head that my baby had.
Yeah.
But like the really beautiful thing about it was there was my doula and my midwife were a bit concerned.
Okay.
Because they could tell that the head was really big and that there was a bit of a struggle, but I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
Like they were just communicating over the top of my head. As far as I knew, I was doing amazing and I was like a goddess and a warrior, and like it was just like, oh, do you think you could move your leg any more that way? I'm like, oh, I was just like, not without pulling it off. You know? But they were so gentle with me and so like just giving me these beautiful empowering messages, and it was that was so helpful.
Yeah.
And then after she was born, it wasn't until after she was born that that we started talking about the difficulty with that, and that was because I had a significant tear, because her head was like 100th percentile head.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Yeah, she was a big baby with a big head. And I'd had the badly stitched episiotomy first time around, so I knew I was going to tear, but obviously it was like a bit next level. So I did end up having to go into hospital after she was born.
Okay.
To have the tear stitched, but I was so elated that she'd been born at home. I didn't care. I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And like I hopped out of the bath with her and was on my couch and just letting her kind of do the breast crawl and hanging out there, and that was really beautiful. And
skin to skin, so beautiful.
Yeah. And I'd also trained with the Australian Breastfeeding Association as a breastfeeding counsellor. So I was like, this is how I want to do it. This is what this is going to look like. Yeah. And we got to about 55 minutes, and my placenta still hadn't been born, and they like it to be born because they were still hospital midwives, still hospital rules. I like it to be born within the hour, but they knew how they knew what had happened first time around, and how precious I was about my placenta and the cord, and no one's touching the cord, and no one's coming anywhere, no one's to come anywhere near me. Yeah. So I just went and sat she put a bowl in the toilet, and she said, just go and sit on the toilet, and it just like fell out of me literally when I sat down on the toilet. And 59 minutes, I remember hearing them joking about it, like that she was putting 59 minutes on the form, and that, my manager's going to think I'm making it up. Yeah. because it was
so good,
just before the moment.
Yeah.
And again, huge placenta for the huge baby.
Yeah. How huge was she?
She was 4.8 or 4.77.
Oh wow.
Kilos.
Yeah.
So she was pretty large.
Yeah.
And her sister had not been. Her sister had been just average.
Oh wow, interesting.
3.4, I think.
Yeah.
But it was there was a knowing. Like I knew she was going to be big, and she measured big at the 20-week scan, and I'd been offered a, you could have another scan at 36 weeks, which I had declined.
Yeah.
Because I knew that if she was big, they would take the home birth from me, because it was still hospital led.
Yeah.
But if they didn't know, then I could still carry on. So it wasn't a huge surprise.
Yeah.
That she was big.
Yeah.
But it was still a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously, as a mum, like I didn't realise she was big when she was born. Like she just looked like a tiny baby to me. But of course, the midwife was like, "Oh my God, she's so massive."
Yeah. My first was 4.5. And so when I had my second, I didn't actually know that like they usually get bigger. So in my mind, I was like, well, 4.5. Like, I can't make a baby bigger than that, surely. Like, that's pretty big. And, Frankie was 4.6.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
But, I just felt like I just make big babies. And for my first, I had, like, whatever scans, and they probably told me, oh, you're probably going to have a big baby. But for my, second, I was like, I don't even care. Like, if I have a big baby, I have a big baby. Don't you dare be measuring anything because I know I expect it. It's okay. Like, but then, when he came out and they were like weighing him and stuff, we were all taking, guesses on the weight. And I was like, no, surely not bigger than 4.5. And to them, they were clearly like, this is a big baby.
Right.
But I mean, our bodies are incredible.
When they're allowed to be.
When they're allowed to be, and tear or not. Like, I think there, is some sort of physiological reasoning behind like natural tears, because like that's your body like making way for baby, right? And episiotomies are barbaric. What was your experience in hospital like then, when you had to get support with the tear?
It wasn't ideal. And there's definitely a culture of like home birth. Women who home birth being treated differently in hospital if they have to be transferred for birth or for postpartum. And there's a lot of things that I would do. Like they said, I had to poo before I could go home because the third degree tear, they were concerned that there might have been some internal tearing, and they needed to make sure that was all good. And I wish I'd lied. So that I could have gone home sooner. And also, I shouldn't have. I feel like I should have protected my baby a bit more.
Okay.
Because once we're in there, then like I was the patient, but then she was the patient because we were in postnatal, and so they wanted to check her out, and I should have said no.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
I didn't have a whole lot of fight in me at that time. And she ended up she had jaundice, and she had to go. I mean, it was fine. I stayed with her.
Oh, they'll find anything.
They'll find anything, right? It was a bit like that.
If you look hard enough.
Well, and I also now know that because of her size.
It's
not surprising that she had a bit of jaundice. And that that if I was just left alone to just breastfeed her more, that
it would have cleared up.
It would have cleared up. but so they because I said, no, you're not taking her anywhere, they brought a blanket, like a light.
Billy,
yeah, that guy. Yep.
Yeah.
And so she was there still with me, and but it was just felt like, just felt like a hassle. Just felt like a hassle. That's right. And, like toe pricks to see what the bilirubin levels were and all the, all that crap.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
And it was, it almost felt like they just wanted to have some control.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't just say, I've got a midwife who's going to look after me at home, and but it just didn't seem like an option. We were there.
Yeah, but that's the power of the system, right? Like it's pretty strong. It's not like you're saying no to one midwife. You're saying no to every single person that comes in and offers, and they're not just offering to you; they're offering to the baby, and then
that's right. They're trying to be helpful.
Yeah, and when you see like other people,
what it looks like.
Other people like accepting it, then you're like, well, am I the problem? So I don't think. Yeah, well, I know that it's not you; it's the system.
Yes, and I know that. I know that too.
Yeah,
and I knew that then.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah,
and I think like that's something that a lot of women, when they choose to go into the hospital system, they have. I mean, even me, like with my first pregnancy, I'd studied midwifery. I knew that I could say no. And so I said, no, I don't want the gestational diabetes test. And somehow I still managed to be having the stupid test. Like, so you can say no, but like it can still happen. It's just crazy. Anyway, that's really lovely that you got to have such a different experience. Postpartum, like that immediate postpartum situation aside, like how did you feel about your body after that experience?
I felt like a warrior.
Yeah.
I was so stoked with myself.
Yeah.
I thought I was so freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Especially because of the size of her.
Yeah.
And that, I just was like, people tell me that you can't birth a baby that size out of your vagina, and especially not at home, and especially not without any pain relief.
Yeah.
And I even at that time I was like, it didn't even hurt.
Yeah.
It didn't, like, there was pressure. There was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
The most pain I remember having was after being stitched.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say though that the surgery itself, I had an amazing surgeon, all female team in the theatre.
Yeah.
And I told her about my first experience and the episiotomy and how I was given too many stitches.
Yeah.
Which I think the male surgeon did on purpose. Husband stitch, as they called it at the time.
Gross, I've heard that too.
And she was brilliant. She said, I'm going to do the bare minimum. You only need, I will let it heal as naturally as possible. I'll do the bare minimum. All the women, I had a female anaesthetist here and another one here, and they looked after me so beautifully. Yeah. It was just, in the postpartum ward that that other stuff happened. So I just wanted to say that because, that was a really positive experience. Yeah. And my daughter was with me. And my kid's dad was with me, and so that was all. That was all really nice. But I felt I felt like I had achieved like the impossible. Yeah. And I couldn't believe what my body was capable of. Yeah. I was pretty amazed with myself.
Yeah, as you should be, rightly. In your work, in the past couple of years, working with women postnatally as well, having had such an amazing experience, do you find that a certain like demographic or somebody with a certain birth experience does come to see you? Like, is it all about trauma, or do women still seek you out even without having had traumatic experiences?
There seems to be kind of two camps. It's like often I get the women who knew what they wanted
Yeah.
And, they might have had a home birth plan with a private midwife or with a group practice.
Yeah.
And it didn't go to plan.
Okay.
So I get a lot of women working with me who were home birth, hospital transfers.
Yeah.
And many of them ended in cesareans.
Yeah.
And so working through that. So there's those women. Then I also get women who really know what they want because it's second or third baby, and they struggled with their mental health in the first year post baby, whether that's birth related or not, the first time around. So they want to get something in place, ready to go. Yeah. Or I get the women who are pregnant and who are doing all the research and really wanting to have things go a certain way.
Yeah.
That's probably the smallest group that I get.
Okay.
And that's the group that I want to reach the most.
Yeah.
Because it's when women consider how their mental health and relationship and ability to take care of their own needs will be impacted when they become a mum. When women consider that in pregnancy or even before they're pregnant, those are the mums that have the best outcomes.
Yeah.
Because they've got supports in place. They've budgeted for supports, which is a huge thing. True. Like I get calls from so many women in those early weeks or months with their baby, and they're like in dire straits. I'm so anxious, or like I can't leave the house, or like I don't know what's happened to me. I've lost myself. Who am I now? Yeah. Or my relationship's falling apart. Yeah. But they haven't considered the need for support in their budget. They've bought all the important expensive prams and snooze and all the gadgets.
Bloody snoo.
The bloody snoo. They've all got a snoo, but they can't afford postpartum support. No, that's not fair. That's me generalising, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's an area that I really try to focus on, is that like how do I get this message to women who are pregnant or planning a family, because I know what difference it makes for people when they have that support in place, even if it's just okay, they know that they have someone, whether it's me or whoever it is, doesn't matter. They've got someone who understands mental health and who understands the signs to look out for, who understands when it's gone, when it's a problem, I guess. Yeah. I think that it can be really hard to see that line between like what's normal changes, because of course we're more anxious if we've just had a baby, right? Because we're trying to keep a small human alive, and they're very vulnerable. And like, so, mums who tell me, I just, when I wake up at night, I check that they're still breathing. Yeah. I'm like, that's not like, I wouldn't call that postnatal anxiety. Yeah. Like I'd call
that's
that
just like
being
having
normal.
a new responsibility to make sure that this small person is still here. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that in our modern world of like do it on your own, manage, your partner goes back to work after 2 weeks, you're in this silo by yourself without, 20 sets of aunties and grandma's arms 100%. To support you during the day. Yeah. Of course, you're going to have challenging thoughts and feelings. Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't mean that you need to be diagnosed with something, and it's it happens to everyone. Yeah. 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 And I'd love for people to be able to just know, I can just pick up the phone and call this person, or I've got this person already like on speed dial. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rather than then having to try and do that work to find someone who you gel with, or who can give you the kind of support that you need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you already feel like crap, and yeah. I saw something the other day about intrusive thoughts, and now I kind of I'm so used to it, but like intrusive thoughts are something that I feel like no one talks about and nobody really talks about in the context of having a new baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think there's so much, and that's why like I have this podcast, is because I really believe in storytelling, because I don't have 11 aunts and grandmas and, you know, women around me to share experiences and normalize, you know, the variation in life, in, you know, motherhood, in pregnancy, birth. So I think it's, really important, to share about the variation. I think it's amazing, like the work that you're doing. It's like very inspirational, very cool. Especially how you've like managed to merge the two, because that's something that I think about as well. I'm like, I've got all this knowledge, but like, what am I going to do with it? But
share it.
Yeah, share it.
I think, you know, I just like would see women when I had my counselling practice, see women where they would, you know, they would have to take all of these different steps to be able to come in to a service and talk to someone. And there were so many other things going on for them that to be able to focus on themselves and their needs and like what was truly beneath their struggles, or what's beneath those challenging thoughts and feelings was like impossible. And so by going into people's homes and spending a longer time with them and like clearing space, like clearing the decks a bit, like so I would literally do the dishes and like set up an activity for the toddler and, you know, do all of these other things so that mum can then go, okay, so now there's a little bit of space to be able to talk about the deeper stuff. Yeah. Because there's not just this whole pile of like this big long list of things that are in the way, I guess, of being able to focus on themselves.
I've still got to like do the washing and I'm just going to get this chat over as quick as possible because I got to cook dinner as well. And totally.
Or coming into an office for a 50-minute appointment when you've got your baby and your baby needs feeding and they're crying half the time. You're like, oh, I'm not getting to it.
So true.
So it's just something that I felt like was really missing. For mums, and it has been very well received. I think, you know, because I'm not funded. It's it's a private service. I think that's probably the biggest barrier for people. Is especially because often people are down to one income. Is being able to fund it. Which is again why that like early education for people, because you know a lot of people who reach out to me when they're 10 weeks pregnant, they then start paying, right? Like they pay it off, but while they're still working or plan it in their budget or because just being able to have someone who can be there for you. And it's kind of hard. It's hard. You know, people say, oh, what do you do? Like you come to my house for 3 hours, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. What needs doing? What's going to need doing? We don't know until we get there. But whatever I need to do to support you to be able to focus on your needs for a bit, I'll do that.
Trust me, I'll make it worth it.
That's right, exactly.
Don't you worry. Well, I mean, that's like something that I think about as well, is that like I really, really want to help women and families and like the people that I work, or the demographic that I currently work with in my, you know, day job. I mean, it's not in the day, but, you know, my regular job. You know, I really, really think that, you know, there could be so many benefits to working with families of that lower socioeconomic status, you know, refugee families, migrant families that, you know, also have so much going on. But like I also need to like pay my rent and like eat my food, and I have 2 kids, and but on the flip side, like I know that in some areas, I think also in South Australia, there's a push for accreditation or like something about like Medicare or whatever for doulas. But yeah, I mean, that's what's happened to midwives. And they've like introduced all these things to try and make it better, but actually it's not made it better. It's possibly made it worse.
Yeah, it's hard. And I do have dreams. I have dreams about funding, a fleet, funding for a fleet of mental health doulas so that everybody can have one.
Yeah.
One of my biggest, my most huge dream is that every person who has a baby is given a bucket of funding that they're not allowed to use for products, that they can only use on services, a bit like NDIS, like it's a package of funding that you get when you have a baby, and it'll be cheaper in the long run, but we know how governments only work in three-year cycles. But it's like, imagine if like every woman was, even if it was $20,000, here's your $20,000 and you can use it on any supports that you want
imagine like
in that first year.
Like pelvic floor and like,
exactly.
Physio, like there's just the list is endless on the ways that could support, but all of those things are expensive for if you don't have private health or whatever else. I'm with you on that dream. I share that same dream.
Let's dream it. Let's make it happen. I don't know how. I don't know who we talk to for, every birth is funded, but,
Yeah.
It could be good.
Keep doing the work. Thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing this with me. Did you have anything that you didn't say or wanted to say before we finish?
I don't. One thing is that one thing I have found when doing this work is that there are that I've been also working with mums who aren't in their early postpartum. So it started off with mums who like had a 6-month-old and wished they had had more postpartum support and then didn't, and then find out that that I could work with them anyway. And it's now morphed into, like, I have a mum at the moment who has a 10-year-old.
Yeah, wow.
And she was never supported to focus on her own needs.
Whoa.
So that idea that you can be cared for like you've just had a baby, even if you haven't just had a baby.
Yeah.
That all mothers need this kind of care, and that, there are times in your life that you might go through different transitions or different crises, or, a mental health crisis or a separation or a loss, your mother might die. There's so many different, a diagnosis, there's so many different times in your life that, imagine what it would be like to just be able to, like, be cared for and be looked after. And I just really wanted to say how all mums deserve that.
Yeah.
And I would hazard a guess that any postpartum doula who was contacted by a mum, no matter how old their children were, who said, "Can you come and support me as though I've just had a baby?" would say yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to any mums listening who feel like, "Oh, well, I haven't just had a baby, but this all sounds amazing. I'd really love that kind of support," you can get it too.
Yeah. That's perfect. I think that's a brilliant way to end. I'm like trying to like flick through all of the different packages that I've seen about postpartum doula, and none of them have said there's an age limit. So, that's really, really nice. And I think, bringing it all the way back to when we first started about the impact on, childhood. And I mean, it's a cycle, right? Like, childhood, teenage, adulthood, and just repeat. And imagine all of the healing that could be done if women knew that this was even an option.
Yeah.
Thank you so, so much.